Welcome back to the Future of Work virtual conference. I'm Chris Bishop. Now, next under the spotlight, how SaaS and cloud computing can help African enterprises future-proof their business models. Now, cloud computing is in its infancy on the African continent, with rapidly expanding infrastructure and a sudden shift to remote working during the COVID-19 pandemic. There is a silver lining. Africa's unique approach and exuberance means that the continent can leapfrog first world countries with SaaS innovation and mobile technology. And I hand you over now to Joining us as moderator for the panel from Dubai is Sana Rajpurohit, who is a management consultant in telecommunications, media and technology. Sana has a background in software engineering, and she's previously worked with Google and specializes in big data analytics. Kabelo Makwane is Managing Executive, Cloud, Hosting and Security at Vodacom. Having started his career at Cisco Systems, he moved on to Microsoft as Country Managing Director and then Managing Director of Operations at Accenture. Alison Collier is the Managing Director for Endeavour South Africa. She has close to 20 years of experience in strategy and business development roles and knowledge of establishing new offices for large multinationals and startups, as well as the power of technology to transform business and society. Eric Kasenge is a technical executive at IBM South Africa. He leads a team of IT professionals to help clients transform their IT environments by implementing secure cloud and AI solutions. Kaohelo Mweka is a senior manager of smart industries at the Innovation Hub Management Company. He leads the development and execution of small and large innovation projects and builds local and international technology, innovation and thought leader partnerships.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Future of Work Summit. Today, we have a panel discussion on how cloud computing and software as a service can help African enterprises future-proof their business models. Thank you so much to our esteemed panelists, and jumping right in, let's just demystify what cloud computing really is. Kabelo, could you tell us what cloud computing means?
Thank you, Sana, and welcome to the audience. It's a privilege to be here. Cloud computing, in its simplest definition, without being too technical, is basically bringing together a shared pool of IT resources. And when we talk about IT resources, we are talking about compute, storage, and networks, and effectively making sure that shared pool of resources can be consumed on a pay-as-you-go type of metered type of service provision, as opposed to the traditional distributed computing model where everyone, whether it's a small home office or a large enterprise, was building their own IT shops, so to speak. In cloud computing, the benefits come from the aggregation and consuming it as a service, as a utility, in the same way that we consume power today. If you just think about very quickly, in the second industrial revolution, with the discovery of electricity and mass production, we kind of in that era from a computing perspective, where we are aggregating this very important resource and making it available on a mass scale in a flexible way, in the same way that you flick a switch today and power comes through and light comes through your household. You can think of cloud computing in the same way.
That's a really good explanation. So moving on, Eric, can you shed a little bit of light on what software as a service is and how it builds on cloud computing in general?
Yes, thank you, Sana, and I'm thankful to be here. Software as a service, as Kabelo just gave a definition of cloud computing in general, you then have different ways of consuming the IT that you have on the cloud. So software as a service is basically a way that, or a model that allows users to consume software, be it an application, and that application can be an email, could be an ERP, meaning enterprise application, and consume it in a pay-as-you-go model. In other words, you don't have to worry about what infrastructure it's running on, where it's residing. You don't have to invest in that infrastructure, and all you have is access to an application, and you pay as you use it. Most of the applications that we have, be it in entertainment, even in business, whether it's a dashboard application you're using, whether it's a content store, like Box, for instance, or Dropbox, you pay as you use it. So
Okay,
that would
great.
be sort of the service.
Fantastic. So would you say the Google Suite, or more closer to home applications would be Google Suite?
Yes, Google Suite is one. Obviously, Microsoft collaboration tools, 365 is a software as a service. Yes, that would be one.
Okay, great. So, Alison, we were chatting yesterday about, you mentioned to me that, cloud computing is a great equalizer when it comes to budding businesses and startups. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about that to us?
Sure. Thanks so much, Sana, and great to be here. So just building on what Cabello and Eric were saying, essentially with cloud computing and software as a service, what that means is that the upfront fixed costs that businesses need to invest in their systems is significantly lower, because you're essentially doing a pay-as-you-go model. And so you can buy your services as you need them. And this really assists smaller and medium-sized enterprises on two areas. One, when they are a purchaser of the service, they no longer have to incur enormous IT costs up front. And obviously all the medium startups and businesses, when they get going, cash is always a big issue. And then on the other side, corporates, when they're upgrading and changing what their IT solutions and systems are, or any corporates who are looking for services, now there's a wonderful opportunity for small and medium-sized businesses who are playing in that tech space to actually get out there and sell their services through to these big corporates via this mechanism. So it's really in those two areas, it significantly increases the opportunity for medium and small businesses. It's really fantastic.
Lovely. So my next question is to Rogelio. Given your experience and your work that you do with smart industries, can you give us a few examples of how cloud computing is fast-tracking innovation in today's day and age?
All right. So because I work with startups, I've seen a lot of solutions coming and utilizing software as a service. And I think I just want to add on first to what Eric, Cabello, and Alison have mentioned, and going back to traditionally the way we used to do things, and back in the days, we used to purchase the software, and then that software had to be deployed on an IT infrastructure. And at the same time, you also had to have your own in-house IT team to sort of maintain the applications and all that, right? And Alison has touched on the fact that now it is starting to reduce the cost of actually operating and actually being able to compete with the big markets. And now, in the context of the African and also talking towards the South African, we've seen solutions coming that are addressing the untapped market or the informal market, where they're making use of cloud as a service, and where these issues stimulate across the African continent. For example, when you talk of Stockfels, they've got different names across the continent and also globally, but the concept is the same. Group of individuals coming together for a common purpose, banking their money informally in order to save and ultimately reach a desired goal, right? And in addressing these solutions, then right now these markets actually are estimated in the billions. But the thing is, they can only be estimated because we haven't had solutions that are able to track these informal markets, right? And now saying that we've seen solutions coming recently and they're able to provide, increase the service that they're offering to these groups, and also for them to be able to help better manage their money and also make informed decisions, right? And ultimately leading to governments being able to track the circulation of money and the contribution of these informal markets in the economy. Thank you.
Fantastic. That's actually a very interesting point. Alison, I'd like to bring this back to you. I understand that there's a reduction in cost and then it's evening the playing field. But have you observed there's, time to market, the reduction in the amount of time it takes for somebody to go from inception of an idea to actually bringing it to the market?
Yes, so I want to say when you're setting up a new business, the time to market is typically the most expensive, the highest cost, and the more that you can reduce that time to market, the sooner that you're able to turn to break even. And I want to say this for sure, like the question that you're alluding to, Sana, the cloud computing and SaaS really accelerates the time to be able to deliver these services through to multiple customers, not just one customer. So, I mean, I'm just thinking I can, by example, and this is just the nature of the IT or tech industry, these products or these solutions are enormously scalable. SaaS solutions in their nature are scalable. So once you've got the system set up and developed, or your solution, you can deploy it to a vast number of customers. And, and there are those solutions where actually the customer purchases and then deploys it really for themselves. So they're hands off. And that, I mean, then you've got an even faster speed to delivery versus other solutions. So yes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But as with any technology, you have early adopters and then you have the legacy players in the market. Eric, my next question is to you. I understand moving to cloud is vastly different when it comes to larger enterprises and when it comes to startups. Can you tell us something? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, I mean, you're quite right. If you take some of the large enterprises, they have about 50 to 60 years worth of investment in IT, and obviously cloud computing is it's emerging technology, it's a new platform, and everybody wants to take advantage of the benefits that have just been highlighted. In other words, faster go to market, and therefore you're also looking to foster innovation, because if you don't do that, then your competition will take the space. So for large enterprises with existing IT infrastructure, they have to assess and define what are the low-hanging fruits from that they can take to the cloud and get the benefits out of it. Because at the end of the day, there's also a cost-benefit analysis that you have to make. If I'm going to move existing applications to the cloud, will that be more profitable, at least cost for me? Or with these applications, if they're too old, I might as well just keep them in my data center and continue to run them. If you have a startup, 2 years in existence, they're looking to get a product very quickly to the market. The cloud offers a development platform. They don't have to invest in that infrastructure. They can quickly develop their applications, develop the services, make them available to the market, and they can go through that agile process of launching an application, launching a service, testing it with their users, testing it with their client, until they can refine their business model. So it's very different worlds and different considerations that the two enterprises will have to make as to how they take that journey to the cloud.
Fantastic. So, Eric, I have a follow-up question for you there. You mentioned that larger enterprises have to take a lot more into consideration when moving to cloud. Can you give us an example of, where a larger business enterprise has done this successfully and where it has been, a bit of a slow start, where people have failed to see the, benefits of cloud computing?
Yes, so some of the low-hanging fruits would be applications such as email, as an example. Mm-hmm. So a number of organizations, even large enterprises, are using Office 365. So you move your email service basically to the cloud, and you don't have to manage it. So that lowers your cost of operation. Some of the collaboration tools, file sharing, as an example, where you can foster collaboration, and which has been very helpful in this remote working setup as a result of the pandemic, where you have multiple people accessing files and sharing files with clients, sharing files with partners. So those would be sort of low-hanging fruits, applications that you can move. Sometimes you can even include HR applications. Where you have a bit more consideration would be, for instance, for financial services, which is a very regulated industry. Can you move your core banking application to the cloud? And therefore, the regulator intervenes. In South Africa, for instance, the South African Reserve Bank, as a regulator, would have a say as to what kind of an application a bank can run on a public cloud, especially when the public cloud provider is outside of the country. So data residency consideration becomes an important element. So that would be one example.
Okay, that's great. From an infrastructure point of view, my question to you, Cabello, is how ready are we to move to the cloud?
Yeah, it's a very important question, and I think if you look at the last half a decade or so, there's been significant investment in building out connectivity infrastructure, both submarine, inland, as well as termination points. So the penetration of connectivity, both in terms of internet service, availability on mobile platforms, as well as fixed line connectivity. If you think about fiber to the home, fiber to the business, has been growing quite nicely, and making sure that more and more we have pervasive connectivity across all markets, both east, west, and central, and as well as southern African markets, and North Africa as well. So we've seen the wax cables come through, and there's continued build outs of those infrastructures. And then, of course, the telecommunications service providers have played a crucial role in building out more base station infrastructure. But I think what's important to just highlight is that as the African continent, having missed predominantly the first and second industrial revolution by and large, we have a fantastic opportunity to be cloud first and mobile first. And if you think about the present landscape, where a lot of the services that people have been taking advantage of during COVID circumstances, and just generally leading up to that lockdown period, have been largely driven by applications, right? In West Africa, for instance, you've got runaway success stories in terms of e-commerce plays from companies such as Konga, Jumia, who have done really, really well to provide e-commerce and logistics services that are driven from SaaS applications. And similarly, in Southern Africa, in other parts of the continent, you've got Takealot, and a few other companies that in the e-commerce space have really kind of taken off, and we see really good growth in online shopping in general as a result of more pervasive mobile and also the growing build-outs of fixed line infrastructure, which will inadvertently also make sure that we have high-speed connectivity and enable more of these cloud-based services to become possible, and provide a better user experience, as it were. Because I think in the end, it's really about the efficiency of the service and providing a good user experience. Just parting shot is that if users have to do more than 3 clicks to access a service, they will more than likely abandon that shopping cart and move on to something else. So that's the standard, and we have to make sure that we service that standard to users' expectations.
Fantastic. That makes a lot of sense. We touched upon connectivity and how there have been massive strides in connecting the continent in general. Can you tell us a little bit more about the nuances around the regulatory environment that either help or dissuade this cloud setup in the future and now as well?
Yeah, another very important question. The big wave right now is around 5G rollouts. So we're in the era of LTE, 4G, and in some cases even 2G and 3G, right? Let's be honest. So the more we see regulatory reform, the better for the consumer experience, and the better the number of use cases and opportunities for small enterprises who can really innovate at pace with the high-speed connectivity. I mean, 5G literally will increase mobile speeds by proportion of 3 to 5 times. In terms of the internet upload and download speeds. With that comes, I mean, a myriad of use cases. If you just think about, I mean, one example, for instance, that we've seen now recently with some of the initial test licenses that spectrum licenses that have been issued in South Africa is an application around geofencing. You know that we have a big challenge with poaching, particularly in our national parks, and there's a lot of endangered species. And companies have really come up with some interesting innovations using IoT technology and high-speed mobile networks together with CCTV surveillance. To combine this with GIS mapping and provide things that will enable and empower the field forces to be able to respond very quickly to potential poaching threats. It's just one use case. And we've seen also with COVID, for instance, in terms of track and trace, all those technologies that enable us to be able to get real-time data around infection rates and so on using mobile applications have proven to be invaluable in helping governments to be able to manage the spread of the pandemic. And we've seen the benefits of what technology and SaaS based cloud services can deliver.
Lovely. Alison, my question to you, your work with entrepreneurs and small businesses across the continent, could you shed a little bit more light on, what are some of the key challenges or hoops they have to jump through in order to, take full advantage of cloud computing as a technology?
Sure, love to speak about that. And also just building on what Cabello was talking about, is we really are seeing these medium entrepreneurs and the smaller entrepreneurs that are tech-enabled, really, and offering SaaS solutions, really thriving in this COVID remote working environment. And when I say thriving, I mean the areas where we're seeing just phenomenal growth in volumes, and it's around the 300% or more mark, is online everything, and that could be comms, customer service, it could be e-commerce, which Cabello spoke about, but also really just the digitization of our work environments and back office. A lot of the back office work is just being fast-tracked, becoming more and more digitized, and we're starting to see that also move to be some front office roles. So your question about, what are the challenges that these businesses are facing with cloud computing? I would rather say there's so many more advantages with what the situation is that we're in now versus the challenges. Obviously, there will always be challenges, the inherent challenges with cloud computing, but they are minor in comparison to the enormous demand that in software as a service solutions are being demanded now from corporates. Why? Because there's this enormous adoption of digital ways of working. And suddenly the customers and the corporates are actually okay to work remotely and deal with everything online. And with that, the entrepreneurs who've got these solutions that have been ready, now they're just seeing a huge uptake in their demand. And a few of them, just to call out names for you. So, the likes of, in the communication space, Clickatel with their chat commerce offering. I mean, they're in Nigeria, they're in South Africa and other parts of the world too, but they've seen a massive increase in demand. The same thing with BPO services that are being run over the cloud. There's a team we work with here in South Africa, Callforce, who've increased their staff complement 30 to 40%, employing like 300, 400 more people since the start of lockdown. And the same thing, Clever, it's a AI solution for back office. And they've really seen such an increase in this demand, both locally in the African continent, globally, and they've recently teamed up with Blue Prism because of that. So it's really the opportunities that entrepreneurs that are playing in the space, if they've got SaaS solutions, there's just an enormous market opportunity, and it's wonderful to see so many of them taking advantage of it.
That's fantastic. And what are some of the industries you think are primed for disruption? You gave us so many examples. With your experience, where do you see the most opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, where do you see the most opportunity? I mean, you can almost say everywhere, but with borders coming down, with people being comfortable to work and at a distance, and then make use of service providers from a distance, I think, you know, in the African, if we're talking just the African continent, in the fintech space, there's an amazing opportunity, and that what we see there is that still, you know, if we just talk payments, there's some payments business that we're starting to see get traction, you know, in multi countries, but we've got a long way to go. You'll be familiar with the big names who are playing in the payment space. I mean, Oza is playing here in South Africa. We've got a few others, PayFast, but something that's really interesting, MFS Africa, they effectively are the switch, and they've made the investment over the past 6 to 8 years to really connect up all of the different territories across Africa, and now are able to do a two-way switch through linking up mobile wallets, and they've got about 200 million on their network right now and growing. And so once you've got enablers like that, then suddenly you can do so much more with mobile wallets existing. Now you've got a way to pay, you know, whether you're a consumer, whether you are an SME, you can use these different channels and significantly lower transaction costs, and therefore, you know, put more money in the pockets of lower to middle income groups, which is just, you know, a wonderful thing. And then with that can fuel more growth. So I think fintech is an area where we're going to see significant moves. You've spoken about e-commerce and communications, and then what follows after that is education, because, you know, once the cost of data is much lower, suddenly all these other offerings become so much more appealing and attractive, especially to people with a lower income. And so, you know, the opportunity that sits in the education space, and we're also seeing a significant jump in the ed tech plays across Africa. So, no, exciting times.
Right. Seems like there are opportunities across the board for, you know, application of cloud computing. My next question is essentially to Raquel. Can you tell us a little bit more about the public sector innovations that you're seeing?
Certainly, Sana. And before actually I even address that, I just want to add on to what what you asked Alison earlier on about the challenges that are faced by some of the SMEs and also the startups. So when engaging with global markets, you have to ensure that whoever you partner with actually meet the regulations of the different countries that you're going to be operating in or exporting your solution to. You know, and also in today's world, we've seen that data is actually the new currency, and that has to be protected. You know, and but of course it can be mitigated through confidentiality clauses. And in terms of the different industries disrupted, like Alison has alluded, that plenty of industries, particularly industries that actually don't offer IT solutions as their core offering, right? Talking to the education department as we speak right now, we've seen now during this time of this COVID pandemic, teachers actually being able to now school engage with learners and also their parents, you know, at the comfort of their homes, and also assigning tasks and homeworks. Like I said, in the comfort of their homes. We've seen solutions in the law enforcement, where I think, for example, one of the solutions that I've worked with, it's Pulejo, where they've got a solution where they're able to actually get information and be able to predict the high zones of crimes. And then the law enforcement will be able to take that information and be able to manage and deploy their staff according to the data presented, right? And ultimately exporting these solutions to the rest of the world, because crime is actually not a local problem, but a global problem. And what I like about SaaS and what it has brought is that it is able to allow these startups to actually ensure reliability of their solutions, accessibility, and also availability of the solutions, the same as the multinational corporates, right? But without having the same balance sheet as them. So yeah, and in the public sector, we've seen a lot of solutions which I've just now mentioned what it can do in terms of crime and also in terms of the education itself. Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. So Eric, my next question is to you. Given how we are going full force ahead with like a cloud-first strategy on the continent, how ready are we? Do we have in terms of data centers and the technology infrastructure? Where would you place the continent in terms of technology?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So from a data center footprint perspective, I think we have some way to go. The African Data Centers Association, they started in 2017 and they released a first report earlier this year on the state of data centers in Africa. Interestingly, one of the findings is that the footprint we have in terms of square meters for the whole continent is similar to what you have for Paris or Amsterdam, which have like 12 million people in the cities, whereas we're talking about 1.3 billion people. So there is a way to go, and actually an area of opportunity, because there is quite a lot of investment going into creating data centers, setting them up in the continent. And obviously the data centers require the infrastructure, power, and so forth to be able to operate, which a number of the African economies have to have some challenges with. So yes, we do have some way to go, but I would say the readiness in terms of cloud adoption, whether it's large enterprises or SMMEs, is there. And the relaxation of some of the regulation when it comes to data residency issues and so forth, all of that is helping in making the environment conducive for leapfrogging with technologies within the continent. So yes, we do have challenges with infrastructure, but I think there's a lot of investment going in there. And we've seen the example of some of the large public cloud providers setting up their own data centers in South Africa. And as we have more and more data centers in the continent, the environment will be conducive. Kabelo mentioned earlier that it's about user experience. We have more of the public cloud providers investing in the various countries. And actually some emerging ecosystems are taking place where companies have opportunities to partner with public cloud providers to be able to offer certain services. That's already happening in Nigeria. It's happening in Ghana. The mobile providers partnering with the public cloud providers. So there's various business models that are emerging to take advantage of the opportunities that we have in the continent.
I'd like to actually circle back to data residency, Eric. Does data residency really matter? Why do regulators seem to care so much about having data within the confines of the geography that they're in?
Well, various countries have enacted laws. As an example, very recent, the 1st of July in South Africa, the Privacy Act came into effect, and this may be covered later on in the security section or maybe earlier on. So companies have to demonstrate compliance to a number of these laws that regulators require them to do. So as a result, they want to make sure that wherever they would put data related for their clients or for their business as well, they're able to demonstrate that compliance. And if you talk to certain government entities, the first thing they'll tell you that as a government, because of sovereignty issues, we do not want to have our data residing outside of the country. Now, there are different technologies that you can use, even if you locate the data outside, to protect that data. So it becomes important for compliance to regulation, even though I've had engagement with clients where they would say that data residency is a prime consideration, whereas they are using, for instance, 365, which is sitting in a data center in Europe. and email data is quite important for the organization as well. So there, I think classification of the data can define what kind of data you're comfortable to put outside and which kind of data you can keep inside the country. But that has also given effect to what is called private cloud emerging in countries. I mentioned earlier the ecosystems that are developing between the public cloud providers, local service providers, mobile companies, where organizations are also looking at building private clouds, where they would co-locate applications in one data center, and all of that hosted by one of the service providers. So there are different, models emerging to be able to satisfy the regulatory compliance requirements.
Okay. So, Cabello, let's talk a little bit about data security. What are the things we need to take into consideration when migrating to the cloud? Because there were some interesting points made in the previous panel about how we are only as strong as our weakest link, that being our people. So could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think you cannot overemphasize the importance of data security as it pertains to cloud technologies. And with more and more, let's call it centralization of data assets and data resources, this becomes an even more important topic. Just based on what Eric also mentioned, there is concern around. So we need to maybe let's maybe separate a couple of issues. There's the notion of trust in the cloud, which is really a user-driven concept, right? And a lot of the hyperscale cloud providers have spent an inordinate amount of money making sure that they establish trust in the use of cloud resources and cloud computing technology. So that's one thing, and then that's managing user perceptions as well. There's the issue of privacy, which is a real concern, just in terms of how data that is stored in the cloud is used. Let's call it managed, and even at times manipulated. For various particular uses, right? And then there's the fundamentals of making sure that there's data security. So effectively, data at rest, data in transit, and data in its usage must be governed by a sound security strategy and sound security infrastructure. What we're seeing, as we evolve and mature the use of cloud technology, we're seeing more and more of these security features becoming embedded within the cloud technology itself, and some of it actually driven by AI enhancements, analytics and AI enhancements. So what do I mean by this? Effectively, you have systems, AI agents, artificial intelligence agents that are deployed within the infrastructure as security agents that are they act like the cloud police. They detect anomalies, they detect, they trend the types of traffic patterns that traverse the infrastructure, and effectively alert proactively the people that manage the tech geeks that sit in the cold rooms and manage this infrastructure to say, hey, something is untoward here. You need to do something. So effectively, it's becoming more and more, let's call it autonomous systems that are security aware themselves, because to your point, the weakness is also about human intervention. So if human intervention is reactive, we need to find a fix that can help or assist human intervention to move from reactivity to proactive management. And hence why we talk about this, the SIEM framework, which SIEM framework, which is Security Incident and Event Monitoring framework, which complies to standards from the NIST sort of security governing bodies or ISO governing bodies, which are internationally recognized standards and frameworks. And what that basically means is that you employ or deploy capability that enables you to be able to, even while you sleep, there's the security police that are active in the network that help you and send you alerts if something is going awry. So I think it's important, and I think it's important to separate it along those three platitudes, just in terms of how we approach the the challenge and the considerations around security. And maybe lastly, security is also quite important when it comes to enterprises. Enterprises have a big responsibility because consumers entrust them with their data assets, right? And data profiles. So when we talk about PII data, so personal identifiable data, we've seen quite a number of breaches in recent times, both reported and unreported, by the way. So the number of hacks has escalated exponentially with COVID lockdown, and to Alice's earlier point, moving to remote work from home, etc. Hackers love bandwidth, and with increases in bandwidth penetration, you'll see more hacking attempts and more distributed hack incidences as well. So working as cabals across geographies in different territories in different parts of the world. So therefore, there's a big responsibility on enterprises to make sure that they have a complete and comprehensive security and governance model to manage their clients' data and protect it against any potential breaches. There's an equal shared responsibility on the end user as well, to make sure that they take the minimum set of let's call it responsibilities to make sure that their information is secure, i.e., being aware of phishing type of attacks, and not just clicking on any email that comes into your inbox. That alertness is important on the user side, but also making sure that basic things like antivirus software on their machines and their devices. So something that I'm very passionate about is just to say that people must just be aware that a mobile phone is effectively a pocket PC. And as such, you should treat it in exactly the same way as you treat your laptop, and protect it in the same way that you protect your laptop by deploying. You'd be surprised at how few people actually think of antivirus running on their mobile devices and making sure that they help secure their data, or more importantly, exfiltration, virus protection software or data exfiltration applications that protect, people siphoning data that they don't want, to be used without their consent. Very important topic, but yeah, in the interest of time, I'll leave it at that.
No, that's actually very enlightening. Alison, my next question is to you. From the whole conversation we've been having so far, with the cloud-first strategy, tech seems to be at the center of strategy for any business going forward. So, how involved should the C-suite be in driving these these long-term strategies for a business, even if you're not a pure tech player in the market?
Yeah. Well, I could say it's a great question, and yeah, tech enables you to typically deliver your solution faster and more effectively at a lower price, and offer more to your consumer, which is what Cabello and Eric were mentioning earlier. So yeah, I mean, tech is at the heart of what any business now, all the entrepreneurs that we're working with, typically it goes side by side with their product or with their service, and so with that. The tech offers an enormous amount of opportunity. And so there are many, CTOs who effectively are working, in partnership with the CEO, and many of the SaaS businesses we work with today, they're led by tech experts. So it's tech experts who are now converting to be, running their business, rather than, previously we were seeing tech as, very much a function within an organization, and now it's mostly at the heart and at the center of all these SaaS businesses. So, given the pace of innovation in the tech sector, if you don't have tech sitting at the heart of your strategy, you'll miss out on that next wave of innovation and won't be able to make use of the revenue. So to keep up with the growth of your competitors, what's going on in the market, tech needs to be at the center of what your business is offering out to the market.
That's very interesting. Actually, that kind of brings me to my next question. Eric, do you think we have the right skill set in Africa Given how tech is becoming central to any strategy for a company going forward, what does the skill set look like? What are the gaps? And where do we need to focus going forward?
We do have real challenges in terms of skills availability. We talk about leapfrogging the technology, and with that, as Alison has just mentioned, IT becomes an important topic. Discussed at every board level. Skills is an issue. It's not just an African problem. I think it's a worldwide problem. And it's even more acute when you look at security in IT. So yes, there are challenges in that space, but it's not insurmountable. I think it will take time to get there. There are different solutions made available by a number of the multinationals, a number of the existing organizations investing into IT. In the hubs, I know the Innovation Hub, for instance, they offer programs in supporting entrepreneurs with supporting them with IT skills or access to IT skills. Obviously, I mean, it is not a problem that we fix in 1 or 2 years, because it's a curriculum. It's not just having the skills, but it's the expertise which you build over time. In that respect, a number of the public cloud providers are also offering programs at university levels across the continent to make sure that the youngsters leaving university are quite conversant and comfortable with cloud as a technology, the application environments that are emerging for cloud, that they can develop those applications. They understand the language of AI. They understand how you put applications together and how you develop an application in the public cloud. There are a number of those actions being taken to make sure that we have the skills that we need going into the fourth industrial revolution. Universities are playing a big role. Incubators like Innovation Hub are playing big roles. Multinationals are playing big roles. So there's a lot happening, but it's not something that will happen in a few years. It will take time.
Right. So I want to open this actually up to the panel as well. A thought I was having a little bit earlier is that given cloud computing and everything moving online, sourcing talent just does not need to be geofenced to the African continent. We can get talent from everywhere else to, chip into what we are building here today. What are your thoughts on that? I'll let anyone.
Maybe I'll go first on that. I think the pandemic has sort of, there was a phrase coined by Stephen Friedman a few years ago that the world is flat, and he was talking about access to skills across the world. So the pandemic, I think, has really removed a number of barriers, maybe cultural barriers, in how you deliver projects for clients, for consulting organizations, for example, and how you access skills. Video conferencing tools are available, and therefore you can have a call with an expert sitting at every corner in the world. You just have to agree on the time, and everybody can get onto Zoom or Teams or WebEx, and you have access to that skill. So from that perspective, I think the adoption issues or the cultural barriers have been challenged by the pandemic, and forced everybody to operate in that manner. So that will be one contribution I can make.
Great. So we are actually almost at the end of the session. I want to turn a question to Hello. What are some of the local and global trends we are seeing in cloud computing?
Repeat the question again.
We're just talking about, we wanted to understand a little bit more. Speaking of trends, what are we seeing in the market locally as well as globally? What are some of the cutting edge trends we see today?
Okay, so in terms of the technologies that we're seeing today, particularly within the African content, is that there's a demand for service delivery within the public sector space. The demand for fixing small problems like potholes in the roads, where as an end user you're able to just log on and send a message to the government to come and actually sort out these type of issues. So service delivery has actually been one of the trends across the African continent, and in order to I think service the people much more better. And then also in terms of the skills, I was actually wanted to add on to what Eric was saying as well. Yes, we do have a lot of programs that we offer, and like you've mentioned that SaaS has actually eliminated the geographical borders, and while we're still trying to bridge the gap as African continent in terms of the skill sets that are available and developing them, we still have an access to the skill sets globally and able to tap it at whenever we want, And also from an educational point of view, I myself sitting right here, I'm able to get access to Harvard's curriculum, and that is a distance from where I reside, So yeah, thank you very much.
Fantastic. So I actually have a question from the audience. Is it possible to mention software as a service and cloud computing relationship and the increasing need for agile integration? I'll open this up to the panel.
I think it's the two do complement one another, although they can be mutually exclusive. I spoke about user experience earlier, and part of what people need to think about as they leverage cloud technology is around the experience design, and linked to that is design thinking, and linked to design thinking is agile methodologies that can enable you to deliver incremental innovations very quickly in sort of like a fail fast, fail forward type of approach. So the agile methodologies that are used today to kind of accelerate innovation find resonance with SaaS and cloud consumption, simply because the platforms enable for more accelerated and more flexible innovation, as opposed to in the past where you had to literally procure infrastructure, stand it up, and have a very sort of monolithic waterfall type of approach to innovation. Today, you can actually do it much, much faster.
Lovely. So I think we are almost out of time here. I'd love for the panelists to please do just a 15-second, farewell statements to the audience as well. How do you see cloud computing? How do you see it affecting the future of work? Alison, do you want to start?
Sure, no problem. So how I see it affecting the cloud computing, affecting the future of work? Well, to me, if we just put that into the African context, so what does that mean for African businesses? It means we, with African businesses, can easily sell our solutions globally. So we're just so much closer to that global market, and the global market is massive. And then over and above that, it means it will enable us in Africa to leapfrog a lot of the legacy systems that other continents have had to, step through. So we'll be able to, in many instances, we have a clean slate, and so we can fast track the progress.
Lovely. Eric?
Yes, so I think cloud offers, I guess, a promise for a lot of businesses to extract efficiencies, innovation, and deliver solutions to the market very quickly. So for the African continent, I think the opportunity lies in resolving problems that are really specific to the continent. I could think of, when you're talking about trends, I could think of telemedicine as an example. And the pandemic, I think, has been a case where the barriers to adoption and people feeling comfortable for a remote consultation, that will become normal when we go, beyond this pandemic. So for me, I think there are opportunities to resolve real African specific problems, and that's where, businesses can take advantage of.
Thank you so much. Hello.
All right, thank you, Sana. I think from my side is that I think before COVID, there was still an uptake of these solutions and SaaS solutions, but post-COVID, I think people have seen a greater need of working remotely, using technology, software as a service, in order to improve your operational efficiencies. And also leveling the playing field, as we have mentioned, that it has actually came with actually reduction of costs and then also eliminating the barriers into the market itself. So I think also what I'm trying to say is that technology is is actually playing a bigger role in not in if not eradicating poverty, but actually leveling the playing ground. And ultimately, as a continent, we're able to compete with the first worlds. Thank you.
Fantastic. Cabello, any parting statements?
Yeah, Sana, I think there's a big opportunity in the African context, just at a macro level when you think about industry convergence, and to your point around disruption. So all the big all these small startups can really position themselves very well as big players by leveraging ecosystems to create macro systems. And I think there's a big opportunity for us in the African context from that point of view, especially when you think about sort of things like gig economics, API economies, anything as a service, for example. All of these things signify a gradual shift from you need big bucks to build a big corporate, as opposed to start small with innovation that really finds resonance and solves for people's problems, and that could be replicable and scalable at a global scale. Just look at the tech stocks; they dominate all the big bosses now, as opposed to manufacturing and industrial stocks. So there's an opportunity there for tech startups to really make a dent in the global economic space.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, I think that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much to our panelists for joining us and shedding light on cloud computing and software as a service. We really appreciate the time you took, and hope you have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to our moderator, Sana Rajpurit from Dubai, and also the panelists who are all with us here in South Africa. Kabelo Makwane, Alison Collier, Joaquelo Mueka, and Eric Kasange. Now we cross to CNBC Africa's Power Lunch, South Africa, with my colleague, Godfrey Matizwa. Now don't forget, join us again at 13:30 Central African Time for the rest of the Future of Work.